Okay. And so we wrapped up. So again, welcome to purpose of this book, David and David. And we wrapped up about the wind blowing. So let me just find where we were. Okay. So we wrapped up on the bottom paragraph of 82 and we got to talk about it, but it's such a powerful image laden paragraph that we thought we would hit it again and then start with the new content on the top of 83. So I'll read 82 again and yeah, we'll get this going. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He's like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Have
Such a
anything?
fun, yeah, Abby, you have anything for us?
Oh,
Okay.
okay, go ahead, David.
Such a fun paragraph. And just in case, even though we are in the wife and parents reparation part of our amends process in the ninth step, but just in case, if you're like the alcoholic and drug addict like me, that you were like, I didn't really harm anyone else. Well, let's go through the text here on page 82 in the third paragraph, as David says. So here I am. I am the tornado, and I'm roaring through the lives of others. And in that life, and everything spinning around in the tornado, in the vortex, I'm in the vortex, and it's spinning around me. What's in that tornado? I'm breaking hearts. Sweet relationships are dead. She didn't marry that guy. I turned into an alcoholic and a drug addict. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. That is everything that's whirling around. And in case I was uncertain if I had caused any harms, Bill points out many times in the book the harms that I have caused as a unrecovered alcoholic in the chronic and progressive stages of this disease. Now we are in the ninth step. Just again, a reminder that that's where we're at.
Mm.
And then the next sentence says, "We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough." So back on 19 in the first paragraph, Bill even talks about, that is just the beginning. And if you want to hold the page and go back to "And There's a Solution" on page 19, first full paragraph, we can skip the first sentence. That's just talking about this is not our sole vocation. This is our avocation, is carrying the message. But Bill says it here. We feel the elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. So this would be a great bigger fellowship if it wasn't for the not drinking part, right? But it's like we got to stop drinking. I just don't have the power to do that on my own. And with that sentence that I read back on page 82 in the third paragraph, we feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. If we go back up a paragraph, and in the second sentence, it is a statement. It says, sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that only thing he needs to do is keep sober. So I like, and David likes, we take statements, we turn them into questions. And the question that I'm going to do here is, David, do you feel you're an alcoholic and you say that the only thing you need to do is keep sober? Well, then let's go back to what we just read here, because the book's going to tell me we feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough. Just not drinking is not enough for me. Why? Because I'm irritable, restless, and discontented. That's why. I'm not a pleasant person to be around. I will still have bad relationship. My affections will still be uprooted. I'm selfish because the statement that I read in the prior on page 82 in the second paragraph is a self-serving behavior. This is still self-serving behaviors here. And then after that, in the middle of that paragraph in 82, he is like the farmer. So Bill gives a lot of examples in the big book, and here's one of them. I come out of my cyclone. I come out of this debauchery that I've caused my family to have, and I find that my home is ruined. But I say to myself, don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it great the wind stopped blowing? Dude, it's not enough for me to stop. Just stop drinking. This is a lifelong process of getting closer to power, to my creator, to God of my no understanding, so that I can practice these principles in all my affairs. that is part of the 12th step, and that is the promise that I'm going to have. Is I'm going to have the spiritual awakening. Then I got to carry this message. That's the charge for that thing. And then what the real problem is here is to practice these principles in all my affairs. And when I do that, hearts aren't broken any longer. That's my experience. I'm just saying that's my experience. Street relationships aren't dead. They have become blossomed. They have turned into wonderful, beautiful things. This is an internal disease with an internal solution. And then my affections, they're not uprooted. I know how to love my wife today. I know how to treat my wife today. I know how to treat my children today. I know how to treat my neighbor today. I know how to treat all individuals today. Where, you know why? Because we are all children of God. And my selfishness is dissipated because I try to work this selfless program. And then it says, and I don't have these inconsiderate habits. You know, I'm not doing things to you that harm you any longer. And those are things that we want to look for is in relationships. You know, in the next paragraph, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about how I use language in my relationship and how those things have to change. This is all about change, change. And I don't have the power to do any of that stuff.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit, and I'm going to be redundant because I mentioned this last week, but you know, for Olivia, who's newer in recovery, and anybody else who's newer or new to studying the book, David said this, and I want to double down. One of the great tactics that we employ to stay close to the content, to personalize it, to make sure that as I'm reading out of the book, I'm applying it to myself, is take these statements about the illness of alcoholism, take these statements about the alcoholic and convert them into questions, right? So this paragraph is chock full of them. Did I break heart? Right? Hearts are broken is the statement. Did I break hearts in my life? Sweet relationships are dead. Did I kill some sweet relationships? Affections have been uprooted. Did I uproot affections, right? Did I upheave them? Did I turn people's affectionate nature against me? Have I kept the house in turmoil through my selfish and inconsiderate habits? And then David asks a question. I'm just going to ask it again. Do I think sobriety is enough? And the way Bill is, my interpretation, you know, again, not the gurus or the experts here. I sometimes through the book, my interpretation is Bill is talking about, he's using the word sobriety to mean recovery, and other times he's using sobriety to really talk about physical sobriety, right? Bill, brilliant, divinely wrote this thing, but imperfect in his writing, and that's okay, right? Imperfect, he was imperfect just like the rest of us. So here I believe what he's saying is, do I believe that if I just quit drinking, if I just quit drugging, that's good enough, right? And this paragraph suggests it's a loaded question. I'm supposed to read this and realize that if I feel that physical sobriety is enough, that I probably am being unthinking. And David set the context again. Remember, we're in the 9th step here. Yes, gotta get physically sober. You know, and I'm sure I said this last week too. At the beginning, the only tactic I have is white knuckle, right? When I first come in, you keep it out of my body. I got to hold on for dear life until I start to have that spiritual awakening. And before I know it, I'm not doing any white knuckling because I'm starting to live, right? Starting to walk hand in hand with God on that broad highway. I'm going to get better and I'm not going to be battling it. But just a continued white knuckling, physically sober, staying miserable, not cleaning up the past. And by the way, probably doing more damage as I go about me. It's the antithesis of 9th step, right? Yeah, got to put my life in order. Yeah, got to make reparations. But the theme, the entire point of 9 is to figure out how to be a maximum service to God and all God's children, which is all you guys and everybody else walking the earth. I mean, that is the errand that I'm on, my lifetime errand. I've been saying a lot. You guys have heard me, that you've been studying with us. We are signing up for a lifetime of service. If we want 12-step recovery, it's not an option. And that lifetime of service is serving God and his kids. It's pretty simple. Any circle back, David, or do you want to plow on?
Well, I was going to mention something about what Olivia talked about, and she brought it up before everyone got on Zoom, but it relates here. So I'm trying to stay on point on topic. So, I don't have the power. We talked about, like, she's talked about how people in the relationships with her are maybe not understanding 78 days sober, like, like, how understanding am I supposed to be?
Mm.
Well, I don't need to worry about that. What I need to worry about is a relationship with God, because all my relationships are based off my relationship with God. I'm not going to have a good relationship with my wife, my kids, or anyone else. And what I have found out through my experience of working these steps is when I'm in the ninth step, I see the power of the first 8 steps. And I won't see that unless I do this work. And the directions, the precise, specific, and clear-cut directions are in the big book. And hopefully you got a big book sponsor that can take you through this work and take you through this quickly, because I need power. I need to have access and availability to this power, because I have no power, no choice, no control. And because when I was writing my inventory, and there was no way I had this power to make my amends, now that I'm through this process here and I found out what was blocking me, that my pomp and my circumstances and all my shortcomings and defects of character, that God removed what he saw fit and I didn't cling to anything. Then I had that 8-step list. And then I saw the power of all those 8 steps before me come into my life so that I had the ability to go out and make my 9th step amends. And I couldn't have done that, because I don't know about you guys, but when I walked in and saw the steps on the wall, I said, not that one, not that one, not that one. But 9, oh yeah, I'm gonna go say I'm sorry to everybody, but dude, in the next paragraph, I love the next paragraph. You just wait for it, guys. It's the best. And I'm setting it up for a specific reason, because I have to change everything. I don't have the power to do that without God in my life, without good counseling and good sponsorship and good running buddies. But I have all those things in place today. I don't have this chaos, this drama that I created. And my troubles, yes, are my own making. But what happens if I stop making my own troubles? I won't have all these problems.
All right, well, let's get into it then.
Yes.
Top of 83. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Wow. Ab, you have anything? No words. Okay. Go ahead, David.
So yeah, this is when I see this right here, it says, yes, there's a long period of reconstruction. Reconstruction here is another word for amends. And keep in mind here that we're using the word amends throughout the whole book. We're not using it in a singular form. We're using it in a plural form. And so this is a journey. This is a spiritual journey ahead of us. This, sometimes you hear in the meeting things like, that's the spiritual part of the program. There's no spirit. The whole program, which, by the way, is this book right here, is spiritual in nature, divinely written, like David brought up before, by a guy who's an alcoholic like you and I, possibly. I don't know. I'm not here to judge or tell anyone they're an alcoholic. I'm telling you that David and I are recovered alcoholics and drug addicts. And it says there's a long period. So there's a time frame here, right, of reconstruction ahead. I can't expect 30 years of destruction in my house and roaring through the people like a tornado to be fixed overnight. And those people don't need to change anyhow, is what I found out. I need to change internally. And that's what the steps are designed to do, to get me to God so he can fix and change the things inside of me. So God isn't there just to fix me. He's there to repurpose me for better things in life. That's been my experience. Repurpose. Like, I need to repurpose. I needed that done for me. And then it says in the next sentence, we must take the lead. There's one of those musts, that Howard brings up and Kathy brings up at their big book study. They've counted up to 139. I'm not going to sit there and count them. I believe them. I study with those guys. I think it's true too. There's a lot of musts in the big book. And we must take the lead. I am responsible for the amends that I need to make. I am for all the harms, all the wrongs, and all the faults that I've caused. Not my part. I don't use that language, because if I have a part, that means you have a part. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the harms, the wrongs. And then it says, this is my favorite sentence right here in this paragraph: a remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill. So that's a guiding principle, by the way, too. Because I wore "I'm sorry" out. I don't know about everybody
Yeah.
else. Anyone else wore out "I'm sorry"? Oh my sorry. So I've been married for I think it'll be 34 years this year. I'm coming up on 25 years of sobriety. So I'm not going to say by any means it's been bliss for my wife, especially those first 9 years, and even early in sobriety. But I have learned how to treat my wife like a child of God, like directing through the principles of these steps, having a good big book sponsor, having great running buddies like David and Rob, and sponsees like Esteban and RJ who are on here, that help me more than I help them. But when I'm in if our discussion, my wife and I's discussion, gets a little bit heated,
Mm.
I am able to step back and bring God in quickly and immediately because I have available to me that power in my life. And when I say something to her today, I don't say, "I am sorry for getting angry or raising my voice or saying something." I don't say I'm sorry. I took that out of my vocabulary.
Mm.
What I use here, and I was talking to Ashton about this the other day, is I use words like, "I was wrong for getting raising my voice."
Mm.
And if I do that in the future, can you please point that out to me that I'm getting a little heated right now? Because I don't want to treat her differently than that. I'm a salesperson. I own my own company. I go out to all my customers. I've never raised my voice to a customer, a paying customer. Why would I treat my wife any differently than that?
Mm.
This is why there's so many prayers in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that I could utilize. The Serenity Prayer is a great prayer to use. And when I can't remember prayers in the Big Book, the one I can use all the time, the word help,
Yeah.
because God is closer to me than my breath. All I got to do is invite him in. So no sorries. I'm not using that language any longer. That's just for me. That it's up to you if you want to do that. Counsel with your sponsor or one of your running buddies. That's just what I like to do. And then it says here, we ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. So this goes to what I am not there to take their inventory. Period. The end. This is not about them. This is not their inventory. This is not their amends. This is mine. And David and I got this from Joe Hawk. Love
Mm.
Joe Hawk and Mark Houston and the Ramers and the Parkers and everybody I've ever listened to over the years and years of sobriety. But when I go to them to make an amends, when I'm frankly analyzing the past, I
Mm.
say to them, "I was wrong for doing this, that, and the other thing." And then, are there any other wrongs I caused you? Any other harms that I've caused you that I'm not aware of? Then I shut up for 45 minutes and I listen intently to what they say. And I don't get to talk about it. I don't get to interrupt them. I listen and I make some notes. And then I ask them, how can I make all those wrongs right today? What can I do? And some of the things, like with my ex-wife, I was married prior to my 34 years of marriage here. And the direction that, and this happened with my wife. I went to my ex-wife and I said, "Hey," I said, "I'm sorry for not treating you well, not coming home at night, and all the blah, blah, blah." And then she went on for about 45 minutes and pointed out a whole lot of other things that I wasn't really even aware of.
Mm.
And then, I said, "So how can I make that right?" She said, "Please don't ever tell me what to do again."
Mm.
That's been 34 years. I have never, ever told her what to do ever again, or 25 years almost. I have never told her, never. And I have a relationship with her because we have children, but grown children, but I don't tell her because I honor that amends. It's respectful to do that today. And then it says here, their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. Did I cause some of that? You bet
Mm.
I did. Oh my goodness. I have found out that my wife is a happy, full of joy, and full of spirit. I found that out. What was I stealing from her? I was stealing all the things back on the last page. I
Yeah.
broke her heart. The sweet relationship, the affection was uprooted. I was selfish and inconsiderate habits around the house turmoil. We've learned how to be a loving and caring household today, which has gone on to my children. And now they have relationships with they're married today and they have kids and I watch them. Like, I have out of body experiences watching my children interact with their spouses and their children. And I'm blown away, and I ain't taking no credit for it because
Mm.
I ain't not taking credit for my sobriety either. It's God first, my sobriety second. Let's not forget that. And
Mm.
then it says, so we clean house with the family. And here's my prayer, asking each morning, this is what I say in the meditation, that our Creator shows the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Could I do that? Sure, I could do that. Do I desperately need to do that? Absolutely, I need to do that. Why? Because Harry Tiebold said it. The ego has an uncanny ability to regenerate itself.
Mm.
And it just shows up with selfishness, self-centeredness, this delusion, all these things. And I don't want that in my life today. I don't want that in my. So these are the prayers. There's prayers. Anytime we see in the big book, I'll be quiet after this. We see the word ask or asking.
Liar.
Liar. I know. It's the biggest lie in the rooms of AA
Okay.
or CA.
I'll just say this
thing I'm
one
gonna
last
say.
thing. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's it. Thumbs up.
All right.
Go ahead,
Wow.
bro.
Okay. Sorry, I accused you of being a
Sorry
liar.
about bro.
No, no. David, there was an awesome summary of that paragraph, tying it to so many other things we've studied and yet to study. So I don't, I'll just sort of break this down a little bit, maybe at the more mechanical level. You guys know I'm really big into the language choices that Bill uses when he writes different parts, right? So David mentioned this. There's a timing reference here. And I'll tell you, this time through the book, this study, David, I feel like we've noticed more of these timing, these temporal
Yes, sir.
references than ever before. They're just leaping out, right? So it says, so we're coming out of this, okay, all this destruction, all this damage, all this whole mess, this reconstruction, right? And he's choosing to talk about this as a reconstruction coming out of his imagery about the house getting destroyed. So what happens when your house gets destroyed by a tornado? Well, you got to reconstruct the house. You got to build a new house, right? So he's carrying this analogy, this metaphor in. So what's the timeline for that reconstruction? Well, it's going to be a long period, and in some cases, it's could be over the duration of the rest of my life. So then how do I go about getting started in this period of reconstruction? Well, I take the lead. It means I don't wait for my sponsor to chide me and say, hey man, how's it going on those 9-step amends? I don't wait for the ex-wife, like David talked about, to come fishing around for the amend. I take the lead. I get it going. And if you think about it, how do I do that? It's not good enough to say, remorseful mumbling and we're sorry. Going back to where David already took us. Let's go back to 19 for just a second. Exactly where we were. He read us that second sentence. So top paragraph on 19, we feel that elimination of drinking is but a beginning, right? That's the crux of this paragraph. And then what? A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. This is how I take the lead, by going out and doing and demonstrating, because my words mean nothing. I have to earn the right to have my words have some depth and weight, like we say in our recovery message, right? My family needs to know that there's depth and weight in the things that I'm saying to them, because my words were hollow and empty before, right? So yeah, we're going to sit down with the family, and this is a whole lot of direction here. Sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past. That's direction being laid out here. We're not going to criticize them. Remember, we're in the 9th step where we're making right the wrongs. We are not creating new wrongs. And their defects may be glaring. So I think Bill is sort of expressing here that, again, we're not saints. We can sit in judgment. I love what I hear Herb K say. He says, I'm not judging, I'm just observing, but he says it with a smile, because we're all fallible. I should just speak in the singular. I'm still a fallible human. I would love to say I'm just observing, but still I sit in judgment, right? And thank God I've got a 10th step. So I continue to whittle away at that and don't sit in it and don't act on that judgment, right? So I've got to sit down, frankly, earnestly, honestly analyze what happened as we now see it. And that is a plural we. It's not just as I see it. It's if I'm sitting down with the family and we're going to analyze the past, there's a collective there. How do I now see it? How does the family now see it? And that may change over time as well, guys, right? So I may be in judgment. I may still be dwelling on what I think they did wrong, but my actions are partly responsible, probably wholly or mostly. I don't like, and again, we sometimes we try to find the spot where the message got twisted and the things that we hear in meetings with my part in the 4-step, your part, and you've heard David and I you don't have a part, right? If you have a part, I can't own it, right? So maybe that's a little bit of where this comes from, the partly responsible. I think Bill's being a little generous here, but that's okay. So what do? More direction. We clean house with the family, figuratively, not literally, although literally sometimes helps too. Asking each morning in meditation, so part of our 11-step process, that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. why do I need my creator to help me go into the day with that? Well, in my case, I still need it 20 plus years in. I can tell you, fairly spiritually fit most days. But my first nature, my primary nature, is to be riddled with the bedevilments. It's not to be patient, tolerant, kindly, and loving. It's just not. So I have to stay close to God so that I've got his guidance, his support. I need him to wrap me in that spiritual suit of armor each day as I go out, right? To do his bidding and equip me with these things. Now today, on the whole, do I have greater amounts of these four characteristics? Absolutely. Am I perfect in them? Hell no. But how was I the first time I was into my ninth step? How much of these characteristics did I have? I was fairly short in my counts, right? But that's okay, because we're talking about, when we're encouraging Olivia before the meeting, get going, get into these steps, do them all thoroughly and honestly. This stuff is life changing, guys. Right? Nothing. In my experience, nothing had so much of an impact on me, furthering my psychic change, awakening me to the spirit, than the 4-step work and the 9-step work. That's just my experience. Life changing. That psyche, everything in my head, my heart, and my gut, cast aside, and healthy new stuff that I never thought I was capable of thinking, feeling, and reacting to, absolutely overwhelmed me, in a wonderful way.
Hey, can I add one more thing, if you don't
100%,
mind?
brother. No.
So, David and I like to bounce around the book, and I'm going to bounce ahead in the book if you guys want to. Go to page 118 of the book in Two Wives. And probably not this group. I'm sure you guys all love the chapter Two Wives the way David and I love the chapter Two Wives, because I read it differently than I have ever before, because I study with people who taught me how to read this chapter. Because first of all, my wife is not an alcoholic or a drug addict. Does not have a problem with alcohol and drugs whatsoever. So she doesn't necessarily need to read this book. I've asked her one time in all my 24 hours if she wanted to, and she does not want to, and that's okay. She doesn't need to. But if I read this page on page 118, first paragraph, this is a great direction. These are spiritual principles. Remember, in the 12th step on page 60, it says to practice these principles in all our affairs. That is the challenge. That is always going to be my challenge, to practice these principles in all my affairs. There's some great direction in the big book for me if I read this chapter for me. So you and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." We have done that. Matter of fact, my wife has done this. In one brief story, Charlie and Parker and his wife, Katie Parker.
Katie.
Okay, so my wife listened to a Katie Parker tape one time. She's giving a talk. I got to tell the story. And she went and got her hair done. She comes home and she walks into the house, and Charlie's sitting in the chair reading a book, and he doesn't even acknowledge that how great her hair looks. And she looks at him. She goes, "Dude, I just got done at the beauty parlor. Look at my hair." He goes, "You know what? Let me have a redo. Go back outside and come back in." And she goes outside and she comes back in, and he goes, "Oh my God, look at that hair. That is the most beautiful hairstyle I've ever seen in my life. You look gorgeous. No one looks better than you." And then he called all his sponsees and had them all call her and tell her how great her hair looked. It's like, but my wife heard that tape about a redo, and there was a time where we started having having a little bit of a heated discussion. You know what she said to me? She goes, "Can we stop right now and just have a redo?" Holy cow, dude! She was able to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." And we did. I don't even know if we did, to be honest with you. So if your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, the challenge of the practicing these principles in all our affairs, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement. Well, I don't know. On my power, okay, I'm awake. I'm not asleep, dreaming I'm awake any longer. So yes, I've been empowered with the message of Alcoholics Anonymous that, I'm an agent of God. I need to treat my wife like a child of God. So I'm aware of that. Next paragraph. Your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. Boy, reemphasizing that just stopping drinking is not enough. He wants to make good. I do. My intentions are good. Give me a lie detector test. But I must do this work. Yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking or doing are the habits of years. All these things need to be broken. But here's some direction. Patience, tolerance, and understanding and love are the watchwords. For me, my wife, not an alcoholic or drug addict, not in recovery. I'm not saying this for her. I don't know what she needs. For me, show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. I would say, which reemphasizes what I said earlier, my wife didn't need to change anything. I was that person running through her life, destroying her, stealing her affection. And when I learned how to be a husband by examples of people in the program, to be honest with you, I experienced that and how to do that. And going through prayer and meditation, I started having a really loving, caring, thoughtful relationship with my wife on a daily basis, in and out throughout the day.
Mm.
And then it says, live and let live is the rule. Oh, there's a rule? Oh, yeah, there's a rule. This is a rule. There's also 3 other rules. I'm not going to take you there right now, but if you want to study the book, you'll find there's 3 other rules in the big book. So it says, if you both show a willingness and remedy of your own defects, there'll be little need to criticize each other. Again, this is his Bill. Yes, he repeats himself a lot. Who cares? I need to hear things a lot. He even uses the word remember at the beginning. You said you were willing to go to any lengths. Why? Because I have a short memory. I forget stuff. Willing to go to any lengths. I don't want to. I loathe myself when I got here. I kind of like myself today because God repurposed me. That's all I got. Thanks.
All right. Let's move on. Second paragraph on 83. The spiritual life is not a theory. Italics, we have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. I'm just laughing at myself. My wife's in recovery, but she has to deal with me talking to her incessantly about spiritual matters. They will change in time. A little bit of a promise, guys. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Ab?
I do have a theory, and it is the general principles drawn from any body of facts, or a more or less plausible or scientifically acceptable general principle offered in explanation of observed facts.
Go, David. You're on extra fire tonight. Keep going, brother.
Well, when I sat down and I started, like you said earlier in the talk here today, like when I look at this thing, sometimes these pages just scream out to me. I went to prayer and meditation before I do this, as I always would. Anytime I get with a sponsee, anytime I come home from work, anytime do I desperately need God? I absolutely do, because of my shortcomings and my defects of character. And when I brought him in and I started reading this and getting prepared for tonight before this study, these pages were screaming at me. And I just love this. It says the spiritual life is not a theory. That is what we have to offer here, a spiritual life. That is what we're offering here, a life different than I've ever lived before. And it's not a theory. Hold on, I screwed up. A theory for me is, anyways, I wrote down in my book, is a set of principles on which the practice of an activity is based. What is that activity? That activity is life. That activity is not a theory here. We have to is a must. Not once in a while. We must. We have to live it. We have to. My selfishness and self-centeredness, my ego will show up again, and I will hurt you. And it says, unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon its spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. I can tell you this, that my wife is attracted to me today. And I'm not just talking about physically. And I'm attracted to her too. I'm attracted to her insides. I'm attracted to your insides. And I hope you're attracted to mine, because they're not the same as they were when I got here. And that is not of me. That is through me. And that is called grace for me, that I have a relationship with this power in my life today. And it says, we should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. I do it just like David does all the time. You know why? Because I love being sober. Yeah. I just love it. And I'm not telling her that she needs to do it, but why wouldn't I share the wonderful things that happen in my life? I don't share what happened with my sponsees. I don't name them in a conversation, but my goodness, man, the Mark Houston uses this example. How free do you want to be? He talks about, like, being in church 24/7. Like we get up on Saturday morning. This is our ritual because I get up very early to go to work, so I don't get to see her in the morning. But Saturday morning is our time to drink coffee at the kitchen table, and I start off by making it about her. And about 5 minutes later, it's all about me. I promise you that. And I'm talking about how on fire I am with this relationship with God. Now I've already prayed. And I've already gone to God in my morning meditation, and I've asked Him to divorce me from selfishness, self pity. I've asked Him for that because I need that in my life. So I'm bringing already the power of God in my relationship. So of course I'm on fire. I love being sober. And then it says there we should. Then it says they will change in time. I was totally not allowing her to be the human being that God intended her to be. I told if I did any harms at all, one of the biggest harms I ever did is I stole her hope over and over and over. I stole it every time she thought I was going to put together 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months. I went back out again and I stole her hope. And I came in as a hopeless alcoholic. And I came in here and you guys gave me a life beyond any of my wildest dreams by doing this work here. And it says here that in the next part of this paragraph, it says, our behavior will convince them more than our words. Again, I went to meetings when I first got sober almost every day until I got locked up. I had to do some time for the crimes I committed before I got sober. My last drink and drug. But I went to a meeting every day, and the meetings were never intended to keep us sober. But I went to a meeting every day because that's the kind of sponsorship I had. And he was a great sponsor. I'm not putting him down whatsoever. And I met the most wonderful, you people. I met you guys. Oh my God, great examples in my life. But my word, she didn't even necessarily believe I was always going to meetings at night. She really didn't, because I would come home and be this nasty person again because I wasn't practicing any principles because I didn't have a sponsor that was a big book sponsor taking me through the steps. And it's not his fault. I'm not saying that. He's a great guy. He knew what he knew. But I need someone who's going to hold me accountable to the work here, because living in the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12 is where I have to live all day long so that I'm not in conflict with everybody today. And then it tells me to remember something. I got to remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. So I've been sober coming up on 25 years. I've been married 34 years. So I've been married sober longer than more than half of my marriage. But again, it took a lot of practice, a lot of work, and a lot of God, like less David and more God. You know, running buddies in this program, an accountable sponsor, big book studies. You know, the equilateral triangle in my life, and then I put that. And then how about practicing traditions at home? Those are nice to practice at home too. You know, my life looks different, and you know, my wife today also has freedom. My children all have freedom. My grandchildren all have freedom. And that's fine. This is the grace of this program. This is the grace of the power that comes through the work that we get to do here. It just blows me away. And David always says, when you come in here, you're signing up for a lifetime of service. Yeah, to God and all his kids. And when I do that, it removes the selfishness from me. It falls from me, just like fears fall from me. Those are in the 5th step promises. I don't have the ability to do that. The steps are designed to do that for me, to get me to God so he can do that, so he can repurpose me for the things he intended me to be all along.
Yeah, so we got to understand what Bill is telling us in this paragraph. So he's saying the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. So what is he saying? I mean, to make it simple, I just refer us back to the title of the chapter we're in. Into action, right? All of this information is being presented to me. And at the beginning, perhaps it's a little overwhelming, but I cannot just sit in, and I don't want to sound hypocritical here, because a lot of times we'll ask questions and we'll say, consider. That's a good idea. Consider what we're reading, consider the questions we asked. But there's a distinct difference between consideration and procrastination, right? So consider and then get into some action. Okay, following the directions and the guidelines in the book, I'm probably going to do a pretty good job of in my amends process. Is it possible I screw up along the way? Is it possible I meet with someone that still hates me and I rise to the bait? Yeah, all that stuff's possible, guys. It's okay. You know, we will make it right, and we will make it right, and we will make it right until we've made everything right. But the key here is I do not get complete freedom sitting legs crossed, meditative style in the dark, surrounded by candles. I can't. And listen, if that's part of your process, I shouldn't be making light, because whatever helps helps. But my point is, I gotta go. I gotta be moving. I gotta be into action. I have to get out there. I have to take the lead. And unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. Yeah, less talk. Bill is not being as blunt as that, but he's telling us repeatedly, and he's going to say it many more times, please be a demonstration. Please shut your yapper, and just get out there and show everybody how I am attempting to be a new man. Should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. I already laughed at that. I'm laughing again. David talked about, I don't know. I'm always talking about spiritual matters. I do have to find the right balance in my relationship. Again, my wife, coming up on 18 years, she's in recovery. She's in AA. She works program a little bit differently than I do. It's okay. She doesn't need old Captain AA here to tell her how she ought to be doing things. That's the last thing that's needed in my marriage. And Abby smiled, because Abby is her sponsee. So I'm sure Captain AA has come up occasionally, and Abby gets a full dose of Captain AA, Captain and Captain AA, right, in our other study groups. So can't help it. I do talk incessantly about spiritual matters. I just trying to find the positivity in it, And here's the other thing about an appropriate amount of talking about spiritual matters with people in the family. I've told you guys before, my 81-year-old father just had 14 months of sobriety, right? He was dry for about, I think, 9 or 10 months, and then started going to AA, and now he's in his 9th step. And David was talking about how we go about the 9th step, and what an amazing experience it was. My dad called me a few weeks ago. He couldn't get a hold of his sponsor, and my dad was planning his first 9th step amend to go and make beyond my mom, right? And called me to make sure he understood how to go about it, right? And I told him exactly what David said. And what a blessing. My dad, right? 30 years older than me, 14 months now, calling me saying, hey, I want to make sure I do this 9th step correctly. It's unbelievable. So sometimes talking, okay, I guess maybe not incessantly, but I don't know. Incessantly is okay for me. Has this other wonderful impact. People know where they can come, right? Anybody who's in my life that knows I'm in recovery, they know it's critical to me. It's my everything, right? God and recovery. They know where they can come for help, or they can direct someone to me for help. So book says, don't talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. I promise. If I'm a demonstration and my life changes 180 degrees, and everything in my head, my heart, and my gut gets rich and full and meaningful, the people around me are going to want that too. Most people need something like this. Some people have a great basis of belief and faith, and they're healthy and they don't wallow in bedevilments. There are some people like that. And I don't know, man, of the 8 billion of us out there, it seems like on the whole, most of us are unhappy and could use some sort of system for living, right? So let's be a demonstration to how everybody can get better. Our behavior is going to convince them more than our words. It goes back to 19. We got to be a demonstration, right? It must be a demonstration. And we must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Yeah, so first of all, skeptical is probably generous. Why should the people who loved us and who experienced us for 10 or 20 years, I mean, look at the timing that David talked about. It's in his 25th year of recovery, married for 34 years. So basically 10 years, his wife had exposure to old David, old, drunk, cocaine addict David, right? You guys have heard these stories, right? She stood at the door and said, if you leave again, we're out of here. I'm changing the locks, and so what happens, right? David snuck out the back door, right? Broken out and craving. What do we do, guys? Right? Because frothy emotional appeals don't suffice. So 10 years, I'm just telling David's story here. His wife knew exactly who he was. And I bet, David, you probably wanted her to forgive you and to move on in the first 10 weeks, 10 days, right?
Sure.
We want instant gratification, right? It's part of being an addict. And it's how I want to get better. I wanted Bill Wilson's Thunderbolt Thunderclap experience. I want to tumble out of bed and Oh, but that doesn't typically happen, right? I got to earn this thing. I got to get educated on how to get better. I got to start by learning that I had to concede to my innermost self that I was a real alcoholic or a real drug addict. And then that's just the jumping off point. Then I got to take all these steps. I got to do it all thoroughly and honestly. I got to do it in order. And then I got to get into that lifetime of service. It would be fair that after 10 or 20 years of drunkenness, that the people around me might need 10 or 20 years, to no longer be skeptical. Trust me, most of our cases, we're way ahead of that curve. People are usually so delighted after we've been recovered 10 or 20 months. A lot of those 10 or 20 years are forgotten. And we should be damn grateful for that, because it could have been a much longer period of reconstruction. Could have been decades, right? And sometimes, sadly, and this is okay too, there's some amends we can never make right. And I'm not talking about people who died, because those amends can be made right. I'm talking about the people still living, that we go to them and they say, get lost. I'm not talking to you. I don't want to hear from you. No, I won't meet you. No, I won't talk to you on the phone. Don't write me a letter. Don't do anything. That's okay. That's between their God and them. We make our efforts. We do our best. And if someone doesn't want to hear it, that's okay too, right? It doesn't mean I'm not being thorough and honest if I make every possible effort to right these wrongs.
Yeah, there's one other page I wanted to go to on this and I don't think it's a stretch. I just like to connect dots. And if you will go back to how it works on page 69 in the second paragraph, we're in the sex conduct inventory part of the book. But there's also a prayer in there. There's also some direction in this paragraph. And if I take it even in my relationships here, why can't I do this? Why shouldn't I utilize every word in this big book to the ability that God gives me? So 69 second paragraph. In this way, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal, a model or a standard, right? That's what an ideal is for our future sex life. So just forget that I said sex life, just for a relationship.
Or
we
future
suggested
life. Yeah.
Future life. Very good.
Yeah.
We suggested each relationship to this test. Was it selfish or not? I need to ask myself that question. Am I being selfish in this relationship or am I not? And I'm usually not a good judge of my own character. So that's why I have a sponsor and running buddies. Then it says in a prayer, God, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. As they asked us to do it in the sex conduct, why wouldn't I want him to do that in my relationship with my wife or my children or you? It doesn't matter. We remembered always that the powers that God had given us there are good or for good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly or to despise or loathe or rejected. I don't want to reject the power that's coming into my life just because my ego showed up. I need to ask myself, am I being selfish? Or God, would you please mold my ideas to help me live up to the standards that you would have me live up to? It's just a prayer that I can use. And I use that a lot of times with my sponsees. I look for things and prayers in the book that relate to whatever's going on in their life. And it just because it's under the sex conduct part of the book doesn't mean it doesn't apply. There's things in the book about, am I a producer of harmony or chaos? That's a good question to ask myself quite often. That's all I got there.
So I just realized I was looking at the next paragraph. I inadvertently jumped us into this content.
That's okay.
It's funny how that happens.
Yes.
There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. That's the willingness of the 8th step, right? Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Abby, you got to have some words, right?
I do. I have tactful, which is discernment of what to say or do in dealing with others, especially without giving offense. Servile is submissive. And scraping is irritated, harsh, or quarrelsome.
Thanks, Ab. Let me jump in here, David, since I was just talking about this.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, so there could be some wrongs we can never fully right. I got to be at peace with this going into it. What are my motives and what is the outcome? Okay. So I'm not going to worry about some of these amends. Let's say at this point in time, I've got amends that I cannot make because the other person is simply not willing to interact with me. So if I'm totally willing, and God knows this to be true, that I would make it right if I could, that's keeping my side of the street clean, guys. Right? I ought not feel like I have not been honest and thorough if my motive is pure and the outcome, the desired result is in mind, which is to right all these wrongs, right? If I truly believe that, and I'm not shooting the angle saying, well, yeah, Rob was such a jerk, and he doesn't talk to me, but maybe he doesn't even deserve an amend. Like if I start spiraling in that way, that's not talking about willingness and intent, right? That is me holding on to old things that are going to kill me, by the way, right? If I sit in those resentments or if I develop new resentments because Rob won't let me make amends with him, right? Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And again, pray on that. Talk to your sponsor about that because there are some cases that I've counseled one of my sponsees. She doesn't want to hear from you. Once you finish making the financial amends that you started, then we'll ask again, and then we'll ask if you can send a letter. And if she says no, you're going to respect it. And then maybe in a year or two, you can drop her a note and say, could we do this? We don't get into stalking. Just because somebody refuses to see us and we elect to just write a letter, we could cause new harms, right? So this needs to be figured out with God and with the sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a valid, Beverly, if you could just wait, we'll grab your question at the end. There may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases. Careful with this, right? Want to be careful with these concepts of valid reasons. It sounds like justifiable, stuff like that. Well, the key is I don't postpone because we don't delay if it can be avoided. That's another timing reference. Should I delay? Well, not if it can be avoided. And if I'm not delaying, what does that mean? It means I'm being active. I'm in action right now. And then here's some more. So first of all, 2 paragraphs up, I need to pray, asking our Creator to show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Now I need more help, more prayer. I better ask God to help me be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble. Because again, if you're anything like me, which I'm certain most of you were, good sense, tact, being considerate, and being humble were in short order. I mean, they sure as heck were for me, right? So I need to be a proper person, but without being servile or scraping, right? It's almost like a scraping. I think about it almost like as an onomatopoeia, like a little snake slithering on the ground. Like that is not the position that I take in going forward with these amends. I don't have to be self-flagellating, beating myself up in front of the person if I go with the right intent and if I ask God to help me, with these characteristics and behaviors. So we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone, but we also ought not be confrontational or like abrupt or so matter of fact. This is how it was. This is my perspective. I am making these amends to you. No. Right? Our mood, our manner is what's being guided here. Sensible, tactful, considerate, humble, patient, tolerant, kindly, loving. If I can actually channel, 10% of each of those things, I'm probably going to execute a pretty solid amend. Go ahead, David, bring us home.
Okay, so this is the last example of amends that Bill's going to give us here before we get into the 9-step promises. So I want to reread the 9th step on page 59 of the book, just to refresh my memory. Made direct amends to such people. What kind of amends? Direct amends to such people wherever possible. And then it says, except when to do so would injure them or others. So whenever possible there's a sense of urgency there. You need to make these amends quickly. And the last thing is to accept when to do so would injure them or others. I am not others. I can be harmed here. It's okay because I am the cause of the problem in their lives. So David did a great explanation of what this looks like when I can't get to these people. And Bill gives us an example to send them an honest letter. I have a few amends that I have not made. I'm willing to make them. And I'm honest. And it says, don't worry about them if you honestly say to ourselves that you would write them if you could. It's a guiding principle to say that. But at the same time, I have to really be honest with myself. Why am I not making them? I'm just going to be upfront with you guys. My wife knows that these people are from way before her, and there were women in my life that I was not a good boyfriend, and I owe them an amends. And she asked me not to make those amends because it would harm her. I don't get to harm others, and she is others. So, but I stay open to the thought because I don't know that I walk through a grocery store and somebody doesn't pop in, and I would go home and tell my wife I popped into somebody who said that. I wouldn't hide it as a secret, but I can make my amends like that. God can show up in my life. It shows up in my life all the time. People show up in my life all the time. I've made amends which seem like impossible for me to run into, and I've made amends for those things. But I'm not allowed to hurt others because I have an honest conversation with my wife about it, and she asked me not to do it, so I won't do it. But I stay open to it. So there's, for me anyways, when I sponsor people and I have their 8-step list, I'm not there to edit that 8-step list. I'm there to go over with them and hold them accountable to that list and ask for them to pray for willingness, as I will do for them also. And to make out, and I got this from Joe Hawk too, that get an index cards and make 3 separate piles. And this is not in the book. You don't have to do it. This is something that I want to do and I like to do. And put a pile of index cards of all the harm that I caused Joe, Barb, Pete, all that, and know what the amends is that I owe them, or the wrong I caused. And then that's my easy pile. And then I have a medium pile, and maybe those are financial ones. You know, maybe they are, and I have that pile. And then I have the ones here that wrongs I made never fully right. That pile which I see impossible to make. And my experience is like this: that when I get the easy pile done, the medium pile moves over to the easy pile. Now all of a sudden, the little difficult pile becomes a lot easier. And now the third pile, the one that all these wrongs that I could not fully right, it goes in the middle pile. And then as I finish the middle pile, they become the more easier one. God will put people in my life just the same way as I see the first 8 steps working in my life when I get to 9. The same thing can be true here. I cannot put limits on the power of God. Either God is everything or he's nothing. God is limitless. I can't explain God. You know, the only thing I can say is, what kind of word is God? I would say God is a verb. That's it. I don't know. How can you explain it? He's all action. In my life, my life does not look nothing like it did when I got here. It doesn't even look the same as it did yesterday. Today is even a better, dude. I've had a lot of good 24 hours. I've had a few down in the dumps days. But for the most part, I've had a lot of good 24 hours because I have a relationship with power in my life. He puts you people in my life as examples, as demonstrations, and how to live life through spiritual principles, and to clear up the wreckage of my past and live in the disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. And your life will look different too. That's the promise of the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening is a direct result of these steps, just like the direct amends that we make. Everything is a direct. It directly comes from God. That's all I got.
Perfect place to wrap up tonight. Good job, brother.
Cool. Yes. Thank you.